Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Diplomat Couch. My name is Osli Matsikenyeri and I bring you the show where we sit down to discuss everything to do with diplomacy, bilateral relations, and international organizations active in Zimbabwe. On today's show, we are graced by the presence of the French ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Mr. Paul Bertrand Barretz.
Good morning, Osli. How are you?
I'm very well, Excellency. Bienvenue to the Diplomat Couch.
Thank you so much.
Ambassador, thank you for joining us on the Diplomat Couch. Can you give us a brief history of your career in diplomacy and why you went into this career path?
Well, you know, Osli, what is exciting about the diplomatic mission and vocation is that it takes a lot of different experiences, a lot of different skills and competencies that you have to develop along your career. For example, myself, I started in the European affairs negotiations. I was a negotiator. I was posted in Brussels. I had to deal with mostly economic and technical questions that are related to France and the European Union market. And then from there, I evolved towards multilateral affairs. For example, I was in charge of the G8 summits and G20. I had to deal with diplomacy in time of big challenges, like during the crisis of 2008, the subprime crisis, the Greek debt crisis. So it's very diversified. And from there, I evolved towards the environmental diplomacy. I was the advisor to different ministers on big challenges like biodiversity losses, climate change. I contributed to prepare the COP15 in Paris about climate. So my first background was really multilateral and European affairs. And from there, I evolved to a totally different or slightly different kind of job, that is a bilateral diplomacy, when you are posted abroad to represent your country and to foster the influence of your country in this country and the relationships with this country. So that's a slightly different kind of competencies that are implied, as it's more focused on management, representation, influence diplomacy. So that's another communication as well. So that's another kind of work. And that's what is very exciting about and thrilling about the vocation of a diplomat. And so I'm very happy that I had to discover all these different competencies step by step from this multilateral European background to a more bilateral and influence diplomacy job.
You've mentioned your transition from multilateral diplomacy and your previous experience as special envoy to the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs. How has that influenced your approach to diplomacy when it comes to bilateral diplomacy now in Zimbabwe?
Absolutely. Before I came to Zimbabwe, I was indeed in charge of organizing for the President of the French Republic summits dedicated to the global environmental challenges, like biodiversity and so on. These are the so-called One Planet summits. So, for example, I organized in Gabon one forest summit that was dedicated to the protection and conservation of the forest, and how through the forest and conservation of the forest you can contribute to fight climate change and to fight also the biodiversity losses. So that was very interesting. It was multilateral diplomacy, implying a lot of leaders of the world, not only African leaders, but but also Asian or American leaders, and beyond the political leaders, also NGOs, philanthropies, private sector. So it's a kind of new multilateral diplomacy that really try to engage all the stakeholders on these very big challenges for the mankind and for the planet. Well, I think it was really very useful to start with Zimbabwe, as Zimbabwe is a country that is doing so much in terms of conservation of nature. I mean, more than a quarter of your territory is under conservation. you have a huge and very diverse biodiversity. And you have been developing a lot of effort throughout the decades in terms of conservation. So for me, it was first my desire to go to Africa and to Southern Africa to implement the big ideas that we had been treating and developing at global level on the field. And second, Zimbabwe was especially a very relevant field for me, as you are putting so much emphasis on conservation of biodiversity. And I think that in this field we can do more between France and Zimbabwe, the European Union and Zimbabwe. For example, in the maybe it may sound a little bit technical, but it's very interesting in the field of the green finance. I think that the European Union has a lot of background and expertise in this field. We also have important financial actors, banking sector, and big corporates that are interested in developing investment in this field of conservation. And on the other side, you also have an expertise on the field, and you have a huge and very diverse biodiversity to protect. So I think that there are here spaces for cooperation.
We are going to touch more on that on the environmental side that France is doing in Zimbabwe. But for now, we come back to bilateral relations between Zimbabwe and France. The two nations enjoy some warm bilateral relations. Can you highlight some of the key areas of cooperation, especially when it comes to the economic sphere? And how do you see these collaborations evolving in the future?
Yeah, indeed, our relations are positive, even though I think they could be stronger. I was very happy that recently the Minister of Tourism of Zimbabwe, Madame Barbara Rosdi, came to France. That's a very good sign of engagement. Also, the First Lady of Zimbabwe met in June with the First Lady of France. So those are steps forward that are very encouraging. We try to work in the field of economic relationships indeed. For example, a large group of French companies came 10 months ago to Zimbabwe to discover the potential. It had not been the case for a long time. And recently at the EU-Zimbabwe Business Forum in May that we organized with our European partners, we were the European countries that brought the most important number of companies, French companies. So we are doing our best to increase investment, trade between our countries. But it's not limited to the economic sector. We are doing a lot in the fields of education, teaching language, French language, with our French alliances in Harare, in Bulawayo, with the French school as well, and in the artistic sector as well. We are fostering a lot the relationships and exchanges between French and Zimbabwean artists.
Your Excellency, when we come back after the break, we are going to discuss more about the cooperation between France and Zimbabwe. Join us. Welcome back to the Diplomat Couch. On today's conversation, I'm joined by the French ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Paul Bertrand Barretz. Just before the break, Your Excellency, you were talking about other areas of cooperation between France and Zimbabwe besides economic development. When it comes to cultural exchange and cooperation, what role does the French embassy play, and how do you see this relationship growing in the future?
Well, the cultural and educational relationship is really at the heart of the relationship between both our countries. We have two French alliances in Zimbabwe, very active. with very dynamic teams, one in Harare, one in Bulawayo. We have a French school in Harare that has a long record of excellence. And we are really promoting a lot of projects in the field of art, in the field of culture. For example, we are supporting exchanges of artists. We are right now supporting the visit of different Zimbabwean artists to France. When I am just right now speaking to you, you have a very promising young painter called Kenmore Maruta, who is painting in southeast France, in the Luberon, in Beaulieu, where he is hosted by a gallery, and he is coming from Harare, from the village Unu, village Unu. Which is a gallery in Harare. We have also Marie Hannibal, the singer, the famous Zimbabwean singer, who is going to Bordeaux, southwest city of France, very soon. We have break dancers who are going to go to the Euro-Africa Biennale in Montpellier. So you see, we have a lot of exchanges that we promote, that the French embassy and my team is supporting. By the way, I want to say that you cannot develop relationships without relying on a competent and a dynamic team. That's very important. The ambassador cannot do everything alone. He has to really have behind him a motivated and competent team. And I am glad to say that this is the case for the French embassy in Harare and with the French different entities in Zimbabwe.
Okay, you can go on.
No, and so for art we do a lot. For science as well, we have different French researcher centers that are being represented in Zimbabwe, like the CIRAD, like the IRD, that are specialized researchers in the field of biodiversity, environment, health, and they have been working for decades in Zimbabwe. Some of the French researchers are, for example, specialists of the Hwange Park, and have been developing a lot in the Hwange Park in terms of reflection and analysis and understanding of the relationships between the mankind and the wildlife. And so we are developing more programs in this field. For example, we inaugurated recently a brand new laboratory that is dedicated to anticipate on the risk of transmission of zoonose, diseases coming from the wildlife to the mankind and the human beings. This laboratory that has been developed with the University of Zimbabwe is equipped with top-notch equipments, and we inaugurated it recently, and will be a huge contribution for the monitoring of health issues in Zimbabwe. So there are, I could cite many other projects, but this is just to give you a hint of what we are doing, especially besides the artistic field, in the field of science and research in Zimbabwe.
And now we go to the field of food security, Nourish and Thrive project. Can you tell us more about the French Embassy, AFL, and the government of Zimbabwe, what this project is about?
Well, it was developed in the Masvingo province, where from I just come back. I was there 2 days ago to see on the field how it was implemented. What is it about, mostly? It's about food security, because France, even though it's a very far from Zimbabwe, our countries are far from each other, in despite of this distance, the French government and the French people were very sensitive to the call by Zimbabwe when you were facing the drought and some food security issues 2 years ago. So France and the French government decided to put money where its mouth is. And we decided with our partners, the FAO, and also an NGO on the field called World Vision, we decided that we would put money to try to address the food security issues. It's being implemented in the Masvingo region, in some parts of the province that are really very poor and where the people are struggling to face, have been struggling to face the drought, in the context of, as you very well remember, the El Nino phenomenon that struck the Southern Africa 2 years in a row. So we have been developing a 1 million project, 1 million euros project that has enabled these people, these villagers, to develop their own gardening, to develop their competencies in agriculture, and to get cash to, for example, care the newborn babies who are especially at risk in the first months if they are not nourished properly. And I must say that from my experience on the field 2 days ago, I was very much inspired and reassured about the efficiency of this program that we developed with the province of Masvingo and our partners.
Your Excellency, thank you for sharing how diplomacy is not only between governments, but how you partner with local organizations and impact even the smallest of communities in Zimbabwe. When we come back, we are going to discuss more about the projects that the French Embassy is involved in Zimbabwe. Welcome back to the Diplomat Couch. I am your host, Osli Matsikenyeri, and today we are joined by the Ambassador of France to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Paul Bertrand Barretz. Before the break, we were talking about all the initiatives that the French Embassy is involved in, and one of them is the Chevute Wetland Conservation Program. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure, Osli. Well, it's a new project that we are going to start soon, that is very much aligned with the priorities of Zimbabwe, as they were also showcased in Vic Falls in last July with the successful hosting of the COP15 on the wetlands conservation. By the way, I was there in Vic Falls, and we had a big French delegation that took part in the works to improve the protection and conservation of the wetlands around the world, and especially in Southern Africa. France is doing a lot in this field, and we were very happy to be received in Zimbabwe. The French team was really very impressed by the quality of the Zimbabwean hospitality, diplomatic hospitality on this occasion. So from this background, once again, we wanted to put our money where is our mouth, and we wanted to, at our level, contribute to the protection of the wetlands in Zimbabwe. So with an NGO as a partner, indeed, we chose to help for the protection and conservation of a wetland located in Chevute, and it will start very soon. So we can keep on this a discussion in the future months to see how it goes.
We have talked about the projects in Masvingo. Now you're talking about projects in Chevute. There's another project that you're involved in Wangi, more on environmental conservation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this project and the role of France in supporting this initiative in Zimbabwe?
Yeah. Indeed. As I said, we have French researchers from the CIRAD, from the IRD, from the CNRS, different French research institutes that have been working in the Hwanghae Park for decades. And so they have reached a point last year where they wanted to make a step forward in terms of engaging the local communities. So they have developed a new platform in Hwanghae that is a platform dedicated to research and to interactions with the villagers. What is it concretely? It's a big tent where you have different rooms. One is dedicated, for example, to a library where the local communities can go and discover different books on biodiversity. You have a room that is dedicated to the computer for the villagers, and you have meeting rooms where the researchers can work on their studies and interact also with the villagers. So that's really a very concrete step forward in terms of interacting with the local communities on the very questions that are so much important in this country, like in many countries in Southern Africa, of interactions between the human beings and the wildlife.
And then we come to cultural heritage. How does France plan to promote Zimbabwe's natural and cultural heritage? Particularly ahead of Minister of Tourism Barretz's visit to France. And what potential collaborations do you see between the two nations?
Yeah, protection of heritage has always been at the heart of the French diplomacy. And French people love their heritage and love discover the heritages of the foreign countries. In Zimbabwe, you have a great site, the Great Zimbabwe Site, that is a World Heritage Site, that is one of the marvels of Africa in terms of archaeology and history. And we decided to contribute to the restoration, rehabilitation of the site, and to a bigger attractiveness for the international and domestic tourists of the site. Concretely, we engaged in the building of a new visitors center. It started last May. It is in the process. A few days ago, I went, as I was in Masvingo, I went on the field and I met with the workers. They are building currently a brand new visitors center that will be at the international standards in terms of hospitality, in terms of quality of the explanations about the cultural, civilizational context of the Great Zimbabwe Site. So that's something that, of course, your minister, when she went to Paris, discussed with our minister, and that is something that we wish to inaugurate by the end of the year or beginning of 2026, and it will be a huge step forward in terms of our dialogue on cultural and heritage questions.
Your Excellency, you've outlined a lot of collaborations and projects that are currently ongoing, but what else do you see as potential future collaborations between Zimbabwe and France in the educational, scientific and cultural fields, and how the two nations can work together to bring mutual understanding and development?
So, you know, as I said, I have a wonderful team here at the embassy, and with the French alliances as well, the French schools. So we have a lot of ideas, and amongst others, we are going to launch this afternoon, by the way, a new program to foster the French language in Zimbabwe, and to contribute to train the Zimbabwean teachers of the French language in Zimbabwe. That is something that is very exciting, that we are going to launch with the Ministry of Education also of Zimbabwe this afternoon, and that will develop on a year in Zimbabwe. That's an example of what we are going to do in the educational sector. In the research sector, there are a lot of different projects related to the themes that we mentioned previously, One Health, wildlife and human beings. There are different new projects. There is a big and large network of young Zimbabwean researchers that we are supporting for their PhD in France and the European Union, and for different partnerships on the projects that the French researchers are developing in Zimbabwe. And then a new and other avenue of cooperation that we want to explore is also in the art domain, and that is related to all the industries of animation, gaming, digital representation. So this is a large scope of activities, cultural and art activities, where Zimbabwean young people are particularly talented, and we would like to help them to foster their footprint and to develop their capacities in relationship with our very lively also community of young artists in France.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us on the Diplomat Couch.
You're more than welcome.
With all the programs that you are currently involved in, we hope to come back after some time and follow up on the progress.
More than welcome, Asli.
And to our viewers, thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Diplomat Couch. I am your host, Osli Matsikinyeri.